You're listening to the Home Staging Show podcast in the Season 3, Episode 9. This is your host, Cindy Lin. Hey guys, welcome back to the Home Staging Show podcast, where we talk about all things real estate, home staging, and selling your home to live or to sell. Our show is brought to you by our in-house product, EcoJo, the eco-friendly St. Joseph statue home selling kit. In real estate, there's a tradition of burying St. Joseph statues for good luck, but because all the products on the market were made with plastic, we made an eco-friendly version named EcoJo. He's all natural, warm, harmony earth. For more information about EcoJo, you can visit our website at www.ecojokits.com. On the show today, I interview a professional photographer, Rich Baum, who has a very diverse background ranging from styling and propping for movies and TV shows to shooting real estate and wedding photos. He has a lot of knowledge about cameras and how light affects your final product. I also love his approach for composition. I think this is something that especially the real estate professionals like agents and stagers should really pay attention to. So every photograph you show a potential buyer should tell a story, especially with a composition and all the photos coming all together. They should tell a very complete story for the potential buyers who've never been to the home before. But this doesn't mean that you shoot as wide as possible and cram everything in the room into one photograph. That's going to look very jumbled and there's no focal point. And that will actually defeat the purpose of having a professionally shot photograph. So every photograph should be showcasing your home in the best light possible. And so Rich also gave us a lot of great anecdotes about his past experience working on set. I think staging a lot of times are a lot like set dressing, because when you're selling the home for a very specific target audience, it's just like set dressing when you're shooting for a very specific target audience for your TV show or film. So dressing a show like Game of Thrones is very different than a show like Seinfeld. You're targeting complete different demographics, so you're going to put in different types of lifestyle elements to target those specific demographics. I do want to give you a heads up about today's audio. Rich was recording in his studio, so you may hear some background noises like his assistant typing or the phone ringing and stuff like that. We do try to minimize stuff like this during the post-production of the show, but unfortunately, once the noise is recorded, it's really difficult to pull them out and isolate them. So that's it for today's intro. I hope you enjoy the show, and I really hope this episode is going to give you a really good behind the scene of what it takes for a professional photographer to produce the beautiful photos that we see every day. So let's start by telling us a little bit about yourself, because you have a very diverse background, and I think the audience would definitely love to know about that.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Rich Baum, and I am an interiors and real estate photographer. I do commercial and residential. I've been a photographer all my life, and I had a long background in the motion picture industry. I'm third generation. My grandfather was a vaudeville talent agent. My father started as a vaudeville talent agent with acts such as Zolta the Snake Lady. If you do a search on Google, you can actually find a picture of Zolta the Snake Lady walking down the streets of New York with a boa constrictor that has a leash on it. I swear to God. And he was her agent in the 40s and the early 50s. And he eventually became a theatrical agent for actors. He then moved from New York in the 60s with his family, me included. And he became one of the top theatrical agents in history. He started Creative Artists Agency. He was one of the founders. He was also a motion picture producer, which he produced movies like Cabaret and They Shoot Horses, Don't They, and Killer Elite. And then he went on to join 4 other agents to start Creative Artists Agency, and they became the largest agency in the world, and it still are the largest agency in the world. So he's one of the founders of CAA in LA and London, New York, Paris, you name it. Anyway, I started as a prop master. Actually, I started as an assistant prop master, doing props and doing set dressing, doing stylist, doing other things too, on feature films in 1978. Then I went on to work on various shows like Love Boat and Dynasty and you name it, television. And then I went on to do features like I worked on Gandhi for 8 months in India. I worked on movies like Hoosiers, Naked Gun. If you do an IMDb search for Richard Baum, Baum, you will find my history. Anyway, long story short, I moved to Northern California in 1997, and the motion picture industry was not really happening, and just got back into photography, which I've been a photographer all my life. And over the next, I guess from 2001, when I bought my first DSLR, digital single lens reflex, I ended up shooting and getting fairly good. I was fairly good anyway, being in the motion picture industry, knowing lighting and knowing styling and knowing set and grip work and electric work. I kind of knew a lot about it anyway, just off the cuff. And then I started doing weddings, started doing sports. I am a big photographer of running races, such as I photograph for the Spartan races, for the Tough Mudders. I photograph the San Francisco Marathon. For companies, I'm a freelance photographer. I'm also a Max Prep sports photographer for high school sports. I love sports photography, but the money ain't that great. So I love weddings. I've been doing wedding photography. I've shot over 250 weddings but as a first and a second shooter. But I'm tired of working Saturdays, and I got into working real estate photography and doing interiors and architectural. I say that loosely, but doing some kind of photographing of buildings, and fell in love with it, fell in love with the challenge, and anyone who gets into it understands it's a big challenge, and started really enjoying working with agents that value what I can bring. That's the key word, is value. So I know that you're, after listening to what you're about, I know this is going out to a lot of homeowners who are interested in, as we all are, and interested in selling their house, selling their apartment, selling their property. Well, nowadays with the internet, you got to get your picture out there. You got to have professional work. You got to have good work. So, in other words, you got to first. I think you got to have professional photography and a professional agent, or if you're doing it yourself, know what you're doing. But then you got to, I love that you're a stylist and a stager. I think that staging a house, an empty house, really, really helps for helping people with no vision, helping them have vision, or people that have vision, augmenting the vision and helping that the potential buyer will see what the potential is in this place. And you can put in minimal furniture and really come away with a great product that for a little bit of work, you can really make a place, like slap a coat of paint on a place, do a little bit of landscaping. I can go into that in our conversation about how in Northern California, although it's raining like cats and dogs today, we've had a drought, and everybody's into right now. The whole phase is doing zero landscaping, and we're talking probably, I don't know, maybe 2,500 to 5,000, tearing out your grass and putting in zero landscaping. Well, that's, in my opinion, my feedback is that's selling houses. So it's really a trick, and you can use a stylist and a stager to fill in your house or take away some of the. And we can also talk about clutter, the negative aspects of clutter. Oh my God, people get too attached to what they've got. And I think that if you were to talk to these people, or if I talk to a homeowner and help them understand that you might be more attached to your personal effects. You may love your coffee table. You may love your curtains. Well, but unfortunately, we're selling the wall behind the curtains. We're selling the floor under the table. So how can we best help you sell your place and get the most money for it? And we all need help. And I think staging and photography is probably the two best ways of getting that nowadays. So.
That's very cool. I love your background. It's such a diverse
Well, we
background.
could talk for hours on that. And I do miss the business when I watch the Academy Awards and the Oscars because I was fortunate enough to work on several films, quite a few that won Academy Awards, won Oscars. And I miss that part of it, but the business has changed and I didn't like the way it was going. The business is, in my opinion, on my end of it as a technician, as a below the line, the business is run now by people in suits that are, making money and it's a whole different ballgame. And that's okay, but it wasn't for me. And it went from being a lot of fun and I had the dream world forever. I did location films for 25 years, got to travel everywhere in the world. But it's not like that anymore, and it's very difficult for everybody now because everybody can be a filmmaker, as you know, because everybody can also be a photographer because equipment's very
Definitely.
cheap. And we can all do, you got to watch out for those in your business. You got to watch out for those agents that come in with the iPhone and think that will do the justice to that. So anyway, I had a great career, and I miss it a little bit, but I'm so happy with what I'm doing. I can't tell you. It's the second phase of my life. I did over 30 years as a union prop master. And then I've been a photographer for now 10 years, and I've been a full-time photographer for almost 8 years. And I have great clients. I have great projects. I shoot hotels. I just went down to the Galapagos Islands and I shot for a mural company, doing some landscapes. And I combined it with a family Christmas trip. And I got to tell you, if you've never gone to the Galapagos Island, you got to go. It's just
Wow.
amazing. And if you have a link to my Facebook page, I'm going to be doing a one photo a day for 365 days of my
Oh,
trip.
good for you. That's
And
awesome.
that's what I do a lot. I have a blog too. I keep up on blogs, and that's pretty much it.
That's so fascinating. So I mean, it's such a rare treat, I think, to have somebody like you on the show. I do want to hear a little bit more about the set stuff, if
Hmm.
you don't mind. Because I think a lot of times too, I mean, staging in a way is you are kind of styling the interior to fit a certain demographic for very specific kind of buyers that would purchase the house. And in a way, dressing the set is like that as well because you are doing a movie. Like for example, if you're dressing for Seinfeld apartments, that's going to be very Seinfeld. Like Elaine's apartment's going to be very different. So can you talk a little bit about your experience about working on set?
Absolutely. Well, in many ways, it's similar to what you're doing is staging a house. But in many ways, it's completely different. So if you want to talk about working on film production or television, and those two are also very different. I mean, like Seinfeld
Hmm.
was a three-camera show. They call it traditionally three-camera show. Lucille Ball's husband, Desi Arnaz, who Desi would roll over in his grave to be thought of as the second wing. But
Hmm.
Desi invented the three camera shot, which meant on television they would bring in three separate cameras and shoot at the same time. So if you ever wondered where that came from, that's where that came from. But
Wow.
a Seinfeld episode is you have 2 to 3 walls. You then you have the audience behind you and you have a television cameras. It's very different than a movie or a television show like an episodic or something like a feature based television show because live television is completely different
Yeah.
and you have a whole week of the beginning of the week you're doing rehearsals, you're doing figuring it out, and at that same time the crew is acquiring the set dressing. Well, I mean, a lot of shows though have the same set dressing, like Seinfeld will have the same things, but they're getting together, buying the props for that episode, buying whatever foods or whatever's needed, and then they come in and they do a thing called blocking, which blocking is working out the camera moves with the crew and the cast and getting it all together so it can run smoothly. But if you're, and then you've got cameras that are sliding from side to side and going from one room to another, which these room sets are side by side, so they can just roll down the cameras from one apartment to the next. Now, when you're working on a movie or another type of television show, you're using sets in studios, you're using sets at practical locations, you're using, it all is very different. And so you've got different parameters. And as far as set dressing and set decorating, you've got to, people are hopefully hiring a well-trained, experienced decorator that works together with the production designer and also the director and the cameraman to try and, for one, they want to get the right look of the apartment to match with the character's personality. Like you remember in Seinfeld. Okay, I can go on Seinfeld forever. I never worked on the show. I've been on the set several times, but I used to also go to the show Cheers all the time. I had a friend that worked there, and I'd stop by there when I was at Paramount. Anyway, you remember Jerry had a bicycle on the wall. And
right.
If you all remember, do you remember what kind of bike it is?
I don't.
I think it was a Klein bike. Anyway, that just showed you never saw Jerry riding a bike in the streets of New York, but he always had a bike on his wall. But it gave the sense that this scene is in New York City, and someone in New York City, when they probably started the show, they go, you know what? I think we should have a bike on the wall because that says New York City. Well, for some reason, the bike stayed up there forever, and I don't ever remember seeing a bike in Seinfeld, ever. Him riding a bike. Anyway, these things, too, are dealt with the personal effects, and this can also help you in selling a house or to stage a house. It's just to try and bring in some personal effects. If, some of the houses I shoot really kind of look like are from one magazine or another. Mm-hmm. One can look like Crate and Barrel, and that way, or like, Restoration Hardware.
Right.
They'll have this look to them. And the stager will bring in certain tchotchkes, and what I mean by tchotchkes is certain little items. I have actually also, I work for different agents that hire the same stylist or the same stager. And it's so funny because it's like working on a television show. I see the same props in all these different sets or the same props in all these different houses. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times that works because the agent, and hopefully the agent really is the wrangler and knows what's going to sell your property. But, these stylists bring in these, it could be anywhere from, God, I've had really bizarre little round orbs to put on tables or coffee makers, or we all have cookbooks on those little holders that hold the cookbook open, and you've got plants that you could bring in, and these are all just trying to portray a look that you want someone to walk in to that house, and they're gonna I'm never there when the potential customer sees it for the first time, but I can promise you, and I know this for a fact, you want the customer to see the pictures on MLS or wherever they're going to see it, and they go, you know what, I'd like to see this house. And I'd love it when they walk up the driveway or they open up the front door, the agent opens it up, and the agent's most likely going to step back and let the potential client open the door and look. And the first thing they should look at is whatever view you get from that front door, you're going to run with it because that's the make or break it. And that's the same thing with a movie set or a television set or whatever. You just want it to look like, hey, I want to live here. I love this. And that's pretty much the ball game, in my opinion. And my job is your job is to dress it, make that look. My job is to photograph it, to make it, for one, make it look like it looks in reality. So, you want to make it look realistic and looking really good, which we can go into later. But, it takes a lot of my end photography. But I think you just want to make it like people want to live there. People want to be these people. People want to be Seinfeld, and people want to just love, how many movies have you watched? And you just love the set decorating And
Oh
it
yeah.
doesn't, the object is to make it look like you didn't do anything to it, but that takes a lot of work. I mean, I could go into how much work I've done on specific sets to build, like one movie we made a James Bond themed bar where we had on a soundstage in Paramount Pictures. It's actually a funny story because the movie was never made or released. They filmed 2 weeks and they pulled the plug, but it was called Arrive Alive, and they spent probably $20 million before they pulled the plug. But we made a bar in Paramount, the back of one of the sound stages in Paramount, and we made a bar, a drinking bar, a hotel bar, and behind it was a pool behind a window, like an aquarium. And the
Mm-hmm.
whole thing in the bar was we had to dress the bar and we had to dress the seats and the chairs. And the whole gag in the movie was this was Willem Dafoe was going to be the lead character. And they actually started filming in Florida. And one day I got a call in LA saying, hey, we pulled the plug. But they were going to have a big gunfight. And the bullet was going to go through the glass window on a soundstage. And this window was going to shatter. And the whole pool was going to empty into this bar, this restaurant. And
Mm-hmm.
I was so disappointed I never got to see it because we just built it with special effects and stuff. And it was just amazing. But it was just a way of transforming something that is nothing into just something that's unbelievable and incredible and so Hollywood. So that's really
Yeah.
cool.
I think when I teach staging, I talk about lifestyle elements. A lot of it is
Yeah.
what you're talking about, like that bike in the Seinfeld apartment. It's like, it's not necessarily Seinfeld rides bike all the time in the storyline, but it is that New York lifestyle that you're trying to remind the viewers. And it's kind of these little subtle messages that kind of help to build this entire backstory in a way for the character. And that's why I think for staging for selling houses, it's so important to know your buyers because then you know what kind of these kind of lifestyle elements to queue for.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to ask you a little bit about your setup for the real estate shoots. What type, because we're talking about Seinfeld, right? Like the 3 camera shoot. Obviously, it's different when you're
Hmm.
shooting a real estate property. Like, so
Hmm.
what's your normal setup like?
Well, okay, there are different techniques and ways of photographing anything, but photographing a property or a listing. One is doing available light, which means you just go in, you set your camera up, and you shoot. Or you obviously compose. You obviously talk to whoever to decide what you're going to shoot, and you compose and you just shoot without lights or without anything. The
Mhm.
next way to do it is to do a process called HDR. Have you ever heard of HDR?
No, I have not.
Okay, HDR is basically it's short for high dynamic range, and what that does is the camera takes multiple exposures from very dark to very light, the exact same shot. They put it together in a program, and in various ways. There's many different programs, but they blend it together, and it comes out, and it will be able to show all the areas from the shadows to the highlights, and that's a very popular way to shoot. But it's a way I gave up a few years ago because there are many shortcomings for HDR, and one of those shortcomings are if you've ever seen a listing photograph of a building or a wall or a room that just has these crazy colors,
Mm.
just they don't look realistic. They look just crazy. You could see a Twilight shot that just looks purple and green and crazy green and blue. Anyway, that's a shortcoming. And the way that I shoot and that I truly believe is either shoot ambient, all ambient, available light, but you've got to know what you're doing and you've got to have the right situation. Or what I do, and I shoot multiple locations a day. I may shoot one location over 3 days, but mostly if I'm doing real estate or whatever, I'm shooting 1 to 2 to 3 locations a day. I use lights, and what I do is I come in with a minimum of 3. They're called speed lights. These are fairly small lights, but they put out fairly good amounts of light. I might use various things such as umbrellas or soft boxes or all kinds of things. And I light each scene, everything you're going to see from the camera's point of view. And this is going to allow me to overcome the available light, the ambient light, and the things that are bad. And I can shoot in dark. I can shoot if the house is empty with no lights. I can shoot in anything because I'm bringing in my own lighting. I shoot between 3 and I could have up to a dozen lights. And that allows me just to get, and I'm able to get this will allow also for the colors of the walls to look the way they look. If you've got a specific shade of paint on a wall, it needs to be portrayed as that same color. And the problem is if you're using, let's say you have a lamp in the corner that is a tungsten, we're talking light temperature or white balance. If a light has a tungsten light bulb in it, it's going to bring off this warm, reddish or pinkish light, which looks great in reality or to you, but is going to come off and could possibly look completely bizarre and make the walls where you could take a white wall and all of a sudden this wall looks pink. And I know you've seen it many times where photographs just make that look terrible. Well, what you need to do is bring in lights and overcome the ambient light, these fixtures. And many times also I shoot without any lights on in the house, which if you ever look at, this isn't 100% of the time, but if you look at almost every picture in Architectural Digest, you'll notice that their theme is they don't go with a lot of lights on. They like lights off. And you can go through magazines and look at this. The other example would be Dwell. If you look at Dwell, you're going to notice either they're shooting completely available light or they're using lighting, but they're making it look like there's no lighting, which is actually part of what I do. So, you want it to look realistic. You want it to have shadows if there are shadows, but that takes a lot of work. It's amazing how much work it takes to make something look like you didn't light it. To make it look natural is a lot of work. So I hope that answered your question.
So that's a really great feedback. And so how do you figure out composition for your photos?
Okay. The first thing I do when I come into a house, and this could be for real estate or for designer, it's really to start talking to the designer or the agent, do a walkthrough, and you try and get a feel for what they want. I'm always asking, be sure to let me know if there's a specific shot you want, because without telling me, I won't know it. So you cover all the areas of what you want the overall shoot to be. And then I will come and I'll look at a room and I will try to, there's obvious places you start. Like if you're doing a normal bedroom, let's say a 10 by 12 bedroom, small bedroom, kid's bedroom with one window or two windows. Obviously, I'm going to probably start putting my camera right in the doorway because for one, I want to get back as far as I can so I can, shoot as wide as possible. But then again, I'm going to, I want to embellish on, you don't always want to shoot as wide as possible. You want to shoot appropriately. A lot of agents I want it as wide. I want to see everything. I want to see 4 walls. Well, that's not really what's going to be best. So as far as composition, if I was doing a 10 by 12 room, I'd probably put my camera on a tripod. By the way, every shot is done on a tripod because what I shoot is multiple exposures to mask in, to be able to Photoshop in all different exposures. There's so much work. At least 50% of the work goes on at home in the computer. So what you think looks great natural if you looked at your photographer's pictures in the camera, it ain't going to look like the finished product. Although sometimes I get lucky and I can show you a picture that's going to look almost perfect in camera. Anyway, a lot of it is digital magic and Photoshop. Anyway, so if I'm going to let's say I walk and I look at a space, and we're all talking about space. What do we want to convey? So let's say I want to get a shot. I like to get a shot of what the person will see when they open up the front door. And hopefully what that is a flow. And generally the flow might show you walk in the front door and you see some kind of a hallway or an entry. On your left, you may see the living room, the formal living room. On your right, you might see a dining room off to the right. In front of you, you might see a den or a middle room. In the back of that, you might see a kitchen. Off to the kitchen, you might see a hallway that has a little butler's pantry. Behind it, you can see the den, the other living room. I mean, you've got to figure out how much of this stuff do I want to show? Because more is not always better. And it's impossible for me to, like when another photographer will ask me, how would you shoot this? I can't tell them because I'm not there. I don't know. But once I get there, I can really see what I'm going to shoot. So the composition is really a mix of, you want to show as much as you want to show, but you don't want to show too much. And do you want to see everything? Like I think a lot of times it's you can, instead of showing everything in one shot, break it up into 2 or 3 smaller shots. And you can also, something I do quite often is include a detail shot. So, you're shooting a kitchen where you're shooting from the refrigerator over the counter to the microwave on the right-hand side. So you're shooting a kitchen, you're shooting from the refrigerator on the left, and you may want to even bleed over to the hallway down to the butler's pantry that shows that that's there. You're not featuring it, but you're showing the flow of the room. You're showing the flow of the area, the space. That's what you're really selling. So, you can show part of it, or you can cut it out. I mean, you can show all of it, or you can show the same amount in 2 different shots. And then you're going to go, and if I'm shooting a kitchen, I'm usually doing at least 3 shots, where I do an overview, and I'll do a reverse view and a reverse other angle. So I'll break it up into 3 or 4 shots, depending on if it's a little apartment and I don't, if it's not knocking me dead, I may only do 1 or 2 shots. I usually at least do 2 shots of any space, a kitchen. But as far as composition for like a bedroom shot, I will only do 1 shot now of bedrooms, unless it's a master bedroom, which I will do usually 2 to 3 shots, unless it's got an incredible view or a feature like a built-in closet or something that really warrants doing more. So each scene, let's call it, each scene is different. And there's no way to say exactly how I'm going to compose for each shot. Now, I will add another concept is there are various techniques which help you get a better look. And it's very difficult for normal people, or not normal people, but people that aren't in the business to understand. But you can use things called like tilt shift lenses, or technical lenses that shift and allow you to put your camera up higher and let you see over a kitchen counter to see the area behind the kitchen counter, which could be custom cabinets in a kitchen. So there are techniques and there are technical instruments like these lenses, or various things you can do in Photoshop and techniques to see more. You want to you not only want to see the space, but like whereas I say it's not really important for uh, to take a picture and to really worry about the table or to worry about the drapes, because we're selling the wall behind the drapes. We're selling the floor underneath the table. But the floor, the kitchen, built-in kitchen cabinets, the various, if you've got a bathroom with granite, you spent, God knows, you spent $65,000 on a bathroom. These are things you want to photograph. It's nice to put in beautiful towels, beautiful soap dishes and dispensers and things like that. But that's not what you're selling. You're really trying to you want to see that granite countertop. You want to see that custom tile work. You want to see the things. And that's the trick that not only photographing, but that's the trick for a stylist and a stager to really allow the viewer to see what's really there they're buying. Don't, an owner might see a vase with a beautiful thing of flowers. Well, that may take your eye off of that may be great to you, but it may take your eye off of what you really want to do, and you want to sell the space and sell what you put the money into.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's all about visual storytelling, and
Mm-hmm.
I love that you mentioned camera's point of view. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I don't think most people understand that the way camera sees a room is very different
Yeah,
than we see it in person with our own eyes.
correct. Well, our eyes are unbelievable things where we have, before I mentioned the HDR, high dynamic range photography, which shows very dark to very light. Well, a camera only has the ability to show so much dynamic range. And dynamic range is basically, in simple terms, is the difference between complete dark to complete bright. Where there's no information on the bright, there's no information in the black. Complete black, complete white. Anywhere. It's everywhere in between. And the best cameras can only do so much. I don't know, it's something like 12 or 13 stops. A stop is an amount of light. And I probably said that wrong, but anyway. The human eye, I think, can do 22 or 23 stops. We see things that cameras cannot see on their own. It's just not good enough. Now, the other thing, too, is we see in three dimensions. We see where if you were to stand on a ladder and look down, your walls, I'm getting a little technical now, but your walls and your doorways are going to be vertically correct. If you took a camera up there and pointed the camera down, all of a sudden, your walls, if you're pointing down, your walls are going to go from wide to narrow. They're going to be that's one thing you got to watch out for. Whatever photographer you use, make sure that they keep their verticals straight. And this is a big thing in architecture, but it's a big thing when a builder builds a building, they build the building with straight walls, and it's very important to them. When a photographer photographs those walls, they also generally, and there are rules against it, but generally you want to keep your walls straight. So you're dealing with just the camera is not nearly as good as the other thing too is the reason that your eyes don't see the tilt as a camera would is because your brain makes up for that angle. So it's like you're dealing with this incredible machine, your eyes and your brain, and that's how you see it. Well, when you're dealing with a photographer and a camera, you gotta see what the camera is seeing. Excuse me. Another thing too is you may walk in the room, and often I will see they put a beautiful bouquet of flowers on the center console, on the island or something. Well, when I put my camera wherever I'm going to take the photo from, I will do one of many things. First of all, I'll probably move that bouquet or move that piece where I want it. And I have the ability. I use a thing called a Cam Ranger, which is basically wireless tether. So I can set the camera up, and then I can go out into where I'm photographing, the kitchen or whatever, and I can look into my iPad, and I will see what the camera sees live time, real time. So I can move, and this is something I did a lot in movies. I would work with the camera operator. The camera operator is the person that's looking through the camera and actually making the wheels move to move the camera. And he would look through the camera and he'd look at me and he'd point his finger going over right, right, right. Okay, there. What we're basically doing is we're painting with our objects. This could be anywhere from if you've got a say you've got a we want to paint with the set dressing, and you want to paint with the furniture, and we want to paint with the props, and you want to build a painting. You want to build a frame. I will move chairs just slightly. I will also there's a thing called a single point composition or a 1 point composition, which is basically in simple terms is you go into a den, let's say a formal den, where you've got two wingback chairs pointing at a fireplace. Well, let's hopefully say that this room is symmetrical. It's the same on the right and the left, up and down. Well, what you want to do is when you set up your camera, you want to make sure that everything is perfect. You want to make sure that each chair is angled the right way. You want to make it look perfectly symmetrical. If this is what you're into, looking perfectly symmetrical, you want to make sure that if you have like a kitchen and you want to do a single point composition or any composition, you want to make sure, let's say you have 4 bar stools. You want to angle them. You want to separate them to be perfect. You know, you're not just putting things in, or your stager brings in these elements, these pieces of furniture, these props. Well, they're there and they look great to her or him. But when you're photographing it, you have to adjust. And these might be minimal, like 1 inch or centimeter adjustments, or they could be big adjustments of you could move a chair where in reality it looks nothing like, it looks terrible. You move a chair and it's like in the middle of the room, but to the camera it looks right, it looks appropriate. So that's where I think you're getting at, that you need to trust the photographer that the end composition will look good to the camera, which doesn't really matter what it looks like in person. So
I totally agree with that. I don't think I realized how important composition and cropping is until I start working on photo shoots. Because I assist prop stylists on like Pottery Barn photo shoots and that kind of thing. And it is a process. Like it's like a simple scene of, sitting down at a dining table, for example, but we might tweak that bowl of fruit forever just to like you said, it's like that whole process where the photographer is telling you, okay, now you want to shift it to the right a little bit. And it's kind of like this back and forth dance that you just have to get that prop right so the camera can take the perfect photo.
Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about, like Pottery Barn shoots they're what, not, I don't want to say every photographer, but every photographer that does interiors or that type of photography, that's kind of where they want to be, because I mean, it's great when you work with an art director and you have a stylist or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, and you have a agency person there telling you, no, I don't like that, and the stylist, and they're shaking their head going, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. But you're working on big shoots and you learn the ins and outs of how to make people happy. But really part of my job too is having people trust me. I mean, when I take an agent or a designer by the hand and I go, you know what? I think we should do this. I think we should do that. This is what we want. This is what you want. That's the key. And then once you get that trust, they let you do what you want to do and what you think is appropriate. But yes, you can get into these bigger shoots that are just you could shoot one shot and it could take you 3, 4, 5 hours. And
especially lighting the first shot usually takes several hours to do. And we have to set up the first scene anyway for props. So it's a lot of back and forth. Sometimes I personally think it's a little bit too much, because sometimes you might have like the entire client and the agency there. It's a lot to deal with. So, but I totally understand the politics.
Sometimes it go over the top, and it can too many cooks in the in the fire, too many irons in the fire, too many kicks in the kitchen. But and I've worked on photo shoots before I was a photographer. I did props on several Wrangler photo shoots for Wrangler jeans, and we had a big campaign where we had On some days, we had, God, I think we filmed for 3 to 4 weeks in Lake Tahoe. We had over 30, 40 crew members, and the budget of the commercial, I think, was way several $1 million. And this was a photo shoot. This was for jeans, and a lot of people remember the shoot because they had this beautiful red lab running off of a pier, and the guy in the model in the Wrangler jeans was throwing a stick, and the dog jumped off the pier into the water. Well, that's the one I did. It lasted for years. And this was just, I'm talking as big as a feature film. And I don't personally do any photo shoots that big. Not that I wouldn't like to, but my stuff is a little more manageable, smaller. So.
Yeah, it's more flexible. I actually like it. I've worked on big production as well, and it's a little bit crazy sometimes, I feel like.
Oh, it can be crazy, crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to know about lighting a little bit more. I think lighting is often overlooked, and I think most real estate agents just thought that, oh, if I just turn on all the lights in the house and take the picture with my DSLR, the photos will be good enough for listing photos. But to be honest, I think I, I've seen those type of results because I think most of the time people also don't understand the importance of post-production. Like you said, you're spending 50% of your time on Photoshop. So let's talk about lighting first, though. You talk about that a little bit, but I want to delve into it a little bit more because I do think it's a very important aspect in terms of presentation, and I think it's often overlooked.
Well, it's always rewarding to someone like yourself to identify with how important it is because, as I think I mentioned, the goal is to make it look like you didn't do anything, and the more it looks like you didn't do anything is probably, for one, would be you had to do more work. But let me say this though. We can all get great pictures with our iPhones. I mean, I know I've gotten some absolutely stellar photos with my iPhone, but the conditions were probably perfect for that. And, there's only so much you can expect. An agent goes in a house with a DSLR, or even a point and shoot camera. They can luck out and get some great pictures. Don't get me wrong. The thing is, though, you're only going to get lucky so many times. And then you've got to start bringing out the techniques, the equipment to match what the end result is. And you have to, I mean, when you get to my level or any professional level, you have to be prepared and ready to produce in any condition. I mean, if it's dark out or sunny out or whatever. Sometimes, people think, oh, I love bright sunlight. This is so great. Well, it's not always great. It can be very nice, but a lot of times it can kill you. When sunlight is streaming in a big, huge 20 by 30 foot window with a view, you're in big trouble if you don't have a lot of light behind you to overpower that. And that can take a lot. So I'm saying where people don't understand is that you would think it's like when people say, when I shoot a wedding and they go, oh, it's beautiful, sunny, I love this. And the photographer's going, no. I need shade. Well,
we like overcast, actually.
We love oh my God.
Yeah.
Except a few weeks ago, I came up with the complete opposite. I came up with the darkest day on earth, and it actually was too overcast for me, where it actually was a lot of problem. But normally, yes, I like overcast. It's like when you shoot people, you want shade because you don't want to see the shadows under the eyes. It's the same thing. You don't want to see the shadows. But the ultimate thing to do is to have enough light on your end, bring in lights that you can control the light. You can control the situation. You can overcome what you need to. You can do what you want to do. You have to be in control. You don't want the light controlling you. And that's the way it is with anything. You want to have control. So I think the importance is you've got to have, and it doesn't take a lot sometimes. Sometimes it just takes a couple of lights done well. It does take a lot of technique, though. I mean, this stuff I tell people it ain't brain surgery, but it sure takes a lot more than people think. And I've actually said that for me now, I mean, I shot over 200 weddings. A wedding's easy, a house is hard. I mean, that goes against what anybody would almost think, except an interiors photographer. It just takes a lot of knowledge, and a lot of what it is now at my level, where I've gone to whatever level I've crossed, I still absolutely aspire to be other photographers I know and to do things like in other magazines or whatever. I think we all do that. But I've gotten to the point where when I'm shooting, I'm lighting. I'm also thinking of how I'm going to process this in my computer at home. I'm doing specific types of composites. I'm doing specific things with lights that, I may actually walk out in the middle of the room with a light and flash it. And the agent will look at me going, what are you doing? Why are you, or I'll close the shades completely because the shades are bringing in light that is bouncing off the hardwood floors, and this glare is killing me. So I'll close the shades completely, and the agent will look going, why are you shooting this? What are you doing standing in the middle of the room? And I say, yeah, but don't worry about it. And basically I'm not going to use that part of the image. Digitally, we can use any part. We can use parts of multiple images. We can mask in things. We can take things out. So it's the knowledge and it's the experience of I'm doing this at the beginning while I'm shooting because I'm going to need it back home when I'm editing. And that's when it really starts to come together and get really cool, is when you know from experience that I need this shot, this shot, this shot, this shot, and this shot, because together they'll make the shot. And you're going to get the look that you want. So lighting is just essential to me and the people, and really the people that I hang out with and the people that are on my same thing. It's all about trying to make the end result a level higher than people would think.
That's awesome. So how much post-production do you actually do?
Well, it really depends. If I'm doing a real estate shoot, it's significantly less time than if I'm doing a design shoot or a magazine shoot or a hotel shoot. I'm not saying that the end product is going to be much different. It's like when you go to buy a bicycle, a $1,000 bike, and you want to get a better bike, well, you might spend $4,000 on a better bike, but it's not 4 times better. Mm. But real estate, you got to understand you're making so much money. It's only going to go for, I'm not trying to sell it down, but you're going to put it on MLS. It's going to be viewed in small image resolution. It's going to be there for, a month or so, and then it's gone. It's never there again. So, right. I will shoot it differently and I will edit it differently for the appropriate. And my real estate images are absolutely gorgeous, in my opinion. And you can't really see, maybe you might not see a big difference. But when I do a designer shoot, everything is absolutely perfect. Everything is just, you don't have any shadow you don't want, or you have a shadow that you might not have gotten if you did real estate. Just to the infinite detail when you're doing, and that can also be translated into the amount of time it takes to shoot. For a real estate shoot will be, for me, between 1 and 4 or 5 hours, depending on the house. Editing might take me 20 minutes to an hour to edit. If I'm doing a designer shoot, and let's say that's 25 photos for real estate. If I'm doing 4 photos for a designer, it may take me 4 hours to shoot, and it may take me 4, 6, 8 hours to edit, because it's got to be perfect. And
yeah. You're also giving resolution that are much higher, right? Because the design shoots, they might use it for print, so they need really high resolution. Versus real estate, they just really need to print it on a flyer, so the purpose is also different.
Well, that's in that case, both real estate, both all of mine, I actually am photographing at the same resolution. Is really more about what I'm delivering to the client. When I do real estate, I'm delivering a small image for MLS, sized for MLS, and a larger image, which is just my preference. I give my agents both small and large, and the large would be enough to print. It's still not going to be enough if I was doing a designer shoot. I'd be dealing with huge files.
Yeah.
But it's the same camera, so, you could use it for anything.
So for large files, what size do you usually give to the agent?
Well, the agent I give, generally, I come in my local MLS, all MLSs, our metro listings are different throughout the country for their requirements. And they're changing all the time, I think. But for mine, I give, for small, I give 1,250 DPI. Or I'm sorry, not DPI. I do 300 DPI, but I give 1,250 pixels per inch on both ends, which gives me about a 1.2 megabyte file for my MLS, and it works pretty well for agents. I rarely have a complaint. And for the larger image, I'll do 3,000 pixels by 3,000 pixels, and that just means that you could probably, I'm giving them probably about a 4 to 6 megabyte file, and you'd be surprised. You can print much bigger than people think with less mega. It's not all about the megapixels. So, but if I'm doing a designer shoot, though, or something commercial, I will be giving them full resolution TIFF format, and they're coming out to pretty big files. And some of my Photoshop files can easily be, I've had files that are bigger than a gig per image.
Right. Yeah. Because they need that for high quality printing.
Well, you're dealing with a lot of different things, like if you're doing compositing, but yeah, I mean, it really depends how you're getting into it. If you're doing fashion or something, which I don't really do, I mean, you could be using a medium format camera with, 30. I mean, one of my cameras is 36 megapixels, and that's pretty big, and that gives pretty big files. My photos, shoots I usually shoot, I do 24 megapixel. And for years, I did 12 megapixel Nikon cameras, and I'm a Nikon shooter. And 12 megapixel, I've had billboards at 12 megapixel that could be up-resed, and it's not the same as looking at a magazine, but you'd be surprised.
Yeah, I'm always surprised when I drive by those like Apple iPhone commercials where they put the photos they shot on an iPhone on billboard. And I was always like, how can they print that large, onto a billboard?
Well, part of it is technically if you walked up to that billboard, they got a little place where you can walk in front of a billboard when they put it up.
Oh, it's probably very pixelated.
If you stood there, it wouldn't look very good to you. And it really depends. It's the physics of how close you are to a print. But I do believe that these photos are all taken with it's basically, the campaign was Apple wanted people to send them photos taken on an iPhone 6. And in San Francisco, at least, I used to see there were probably 20 billboards in San Francisco, probably 30 or 40 billboards that were all taken with an iPhone 6. And they probably do some sort of high end up-resing, and there's a lot of technical ways. But I think the bottom line is when you're 100 feet away from a picture, you can get away with a lot more than if you're under a megascope, the microscope,
right. Yeah.
Looking at a magazine picture of a model with pimples, and, it's like watching television now with high definition. It's scary how much you can see.
Yeah, it is scary.
Yeah.
I've seen some movie, you can literally see like pores and like shaving stub on the actor. I'm like, that's too high res. Like, I don't need to see that.
Absolutely.
And so are there some of the universal things that you always adjust in post-production, like contrast or lightness or?
Yeah, when I do any editing, I have presets, and most of us use a program, Lightroom, which is an Adobe product, or Photoshop, but you can have presets, and I call it my special sauce. Basically, every picture I take, I just got back from the Galapagos with approximately 12,000 images, and every single image will be touched. Every single image will be edited, some to different degrees, and some with different presets. But I generally, for real estate, will have the programs generally have these things called sliders, which you can take a highlight slider and move it to the right, which will, move a highlight slider to the left, which will bring down the highlights. You move the shadows to the right, which will bring up the shadows. And it gives me a little better look. And that might be something that I would do generally. I will add a little bit of contrast. I might add a little clarity. I might add a little bit of exposure, probably not. I will do change the white balance to depending on the room and the light. I will also add a little bit of sharpening to it. So, there could be a preset with all those elements, and I will just click the preset on import. Every picture comes in with import, and also we can preset profiles for particular cameras and lenses, which will help with the distortion of a wide-angle lens, which certain lenses, I can guarantee on 98% of pictures I take with a specific lens at a specific focal range, like really wide, I'm going to have to fix the distortion, the barrel distortion. I will also have to fix certain color things to specific rooms or specific cameras or lenses that have a trait of a specific color cast or something. So yes, but after you do, I'm not a run and gun photographer, so every picture that I do is dealt with individually. And I may do a preset to get me in the ballpark, but then every picture I'm going to have to do specific work too. And I can do a lot of work in about 5 to 7 seconds. So, it's not like this incredible thing. But I've gotten really good at editing. I also edited hundreds of weddings, and I got really good and really fast at doing it. And I do a lot of photos, so I've gotten really good and pretty fast at being able to get the picture in the ballpark of what I want, and then I can, do the fine tuning later with what I need.
That's very cool. And what are some of the styling blunders that you've seen?
Oh God. Well, just clutter, too much, paint combination. You seem like you got a house that the painter swallowed a bunch of colors and vomited all over the walls. That's what I don't like. And I also, one thing I just can't stand is I shoot a lot of houses that all the walls are chocolate or tan, brown. It's just so difficult to shoot, and it's just I can't stand. Where I live in Sacramento area, a lot of the houses are the same kind of thing. I'm not saying that people in Sacramento don't have a certain style or whatever, but a lot of them, they get these cookie cutter houses and nice houses. We're talking 600,000-700,000, which is probably 2 to 3 million in San Francisco. But they all have the same color paint. They all have the same thing. They all spent way too much money at Pottery Barn and Restoration Hardware with buying all these accessories. And the house looks great, but they're not getting any of the money out of it that they ever saw, that they ever thought they would. You can't get any return on your investment. And I see that just too often. So that's something I don't like, is I don't like to see money thrown at a house just because it seemed to be the right thing to do. And it's maybe because you want your friends to see that you live here and you did this. It's also like a really a well-known area in Sacramento is called Los Lagos. It's one of the premier, most expensive places. Eddie Murphy's houses. I think it's still on the market after 4 years, but I think it's about 18 million or something. But all these houses are just, a lot of people have no idea. They just threw money at these houses. And, it just doesn't work for me. I would much rather see a simpler house with more personality, more, you know what I'm talking about.
That's a really good point to make, because I think a lot of time homeowners doesn't feel like they have style, so they try to emulate it from the catalog. And I think Fight Club made fun of this in the beginning when Edward Norton walked into his apartment and it literally was like the entire IKEA catalog in his apartment,
Yeah.
stuff like that. So it's not necessarily bad, but I think yeah, like styling does take practice, and maybe that's their beginning space, like phase, and they eventually work up to a better style. But yeah, that I think that's an interesting point to make.
Well, a lot of people too, in regards to what we're talking about, we're most likely you and I are talking about selling your house or you know selling a photograph that's going to have people get influenced. You just got to really, you got to make it, you got to stage it, or you got to like. I really say that what you want to do is get rid of half of what you have and then bring in a stylist and augment what you got.
Yeah.
And there's just too much, it's overwhelming. And, I guess it's a fine line and I really respect stagers and I respect stylists that really understand and know what we're going for. But, it's not there all the time.
Yeah, I think with styling, a big part of it really is editing because I think a lot of everybody has really great design ideas, but the execution is the other half of it. And sometimes there can be too many ideas, like they're so ambitious they want to do everything, but not everything together would look good together. So editing is a big part of design and styling, in my opinion. So yeah.
Yeah, I by no means am I a decorator, and I am just in. I really appreciate someone that can have the vision to keep it simple if it's supposed to be simple. I'm not. There's no right or wrong. A lot of what I do is in a lot of my photography is uh, it's it's almost like art, and there's no right or wrong. But I will say that in real estate, architecture, design, there is right or wrong. There are elements that there are a lot of rules, and it's not like that. Like wedding photography, God, there's almost no rules. In
Hmm.
fashion photography, oh my God, the rules change every day. But in architectural photography, there's a lot of rules. It's got to be specific compositions. It's got to be generally straight verticals and horizontals when it needs to be vertical, when they have to be correct, specific lighting, so, a lot of stuff. And in real estate, you have to get specific shots to show specific things. And yes, there are. It's not the freedom like a wedding or like a dream photo shoot or a fashion photo shoot or something like that. You have to adhere to certain rules, and that's my job. That's my end of it. I gotta, and luckily I've done it long enough that I kind of can weed out. I don't need to do this, and I need to do that. So really, there's various things. So that's a hard question to answer.
Yeah. And how should someone work with a photographer? Like, what are some of the things that you wish your clients know?
Leave me alone. Sarah, swear to God. Now, I'm not talking about a Pottery Barn photo shoot. That's not correct. That is a compilation. That is a combined effort on many uh, ends. You might have a wardrobe stylist. You might have a decorator. You might have a food stylist. That's different. When I'm doing a designer shoot, I'm usually working with the designer. But when I'm doing a real estate shoot, we may do a walkthrough, but there is almost never a moment that I want anybody with me over my shoulder anywhere. Leave the house, leave the room, let me do my work. Trust me. That's it. No question. Bye bye. If you start going over my shoulder, I don't want to tell you what I'll do, but more than likely won't work for you again. I just don't need it, and it doesn't help me. I don't
Yeah.
like to second guess. I don't like to be worried about what other people are thinking about because it just takes me away from the end product. So I love nothing more than even my agents. I've had agents that I've had to tell, please don't talk to me because they'd like to talk. I'd like, hey, this is good. What about this? And I'm like, listen, I can't because I'll miss things. There's too much stuff going on, and to anybody else, it won't look like anything's going on. But to me, I'm worried about the light. I'm worried about the reflection. I'm worried about the everything of everything. And I want to make sure I get it before I go home, so I don't have to come back, God forbid, and reshoot something. I missed something. So leave me alone.
I totally agree. Actually, as stager as well. I mean, I had clients follow me the entire time, and it was very draining. Like, I think it took twice as much time to accomplish what I would normally do in that type of house. And it was like a very stressful project. Like, the whole time the client will come every half an hour and check in. It was a lot.
Well, but then again, on a lot of things like that Wrangler photo shoot I did, or some of the bigger photo shoots I've done, there are agency people, there are just dozens of people, and that's just what it is. And when I worked in the movie industry, I would be a lot of times the lighting does their job, the grips do their job, the camera does their job, and it's 2 hours of lighting up for a setup.
Hmm.
And then, okay, Rich, go ahead. And I'll have to go in and let's say I'll have to go light 20 candles. Well, I'll go in and behind me, I will have 100 people behind me waiting. And I will go light candles and I'll do my thing. And actually, that's one of the things I loved about it. Everybody, these people, I mean, we're talking $1 million actors everybody's waiting for me to do my job, and I'm just doing my job, and I loved it. And I'd look at the first assistant director and I'd go, thank you, we're ready. And I relish that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the teamwork like that, where everyone supports each other. I think that's a really positive working environment.
But the stress could be unbelievable at times. If
Yeah.
I made a mistake, I could cost easily. Oh my God! If I shut down a crew for 20 minutes because something I was doing didn't work, unlike camera can take an extra 20 minutes. If I was doing props and my prop didn't work, it could cost, I don't know, 20, 30, $40,000, and
Yeah.
that's not good. So
I've seen stylists crack on set because literally there's like all these people waiting and
mhm.
waiting, and the pressure is a lot. I mean, when you have client like watching you, like, sometimes it's not just one client, it's like 20 people from the office all behind you watching you work. I mean, that is a lot of pressure as well.
I've seen it all. So
Yeah, I'm sure
I
you have.
luckily got out of it alive. So yeah,
So,
no, I don't really have the high pressure. Even the most pressure I do now is not even comparable to the pressure when I was in the movie industry. So it's part of it. I truly love
yeah.
the lower stress, but it's also I'm responsible for everything now. So
And one
okay.
of our listener actually submitted a question. She's wondering, where do you generally source your product for the shoots, or if you usually try to get them for free for exposure?
Well, that's interesting because I was in the motion picture industry again from I think I started in 1977 or 78. So I've been in a long time, and I got involved in motion pictures when product placement just started, and the legend is it all started it started before, but it all started with Reese's Pieces in E.T. Anyway. I got involved in product placement, so yes, I would source out me as an assistant prop master, not so much, but as a prop master, I would source out products and try and get free product. And that in the 80s and 90s gradually moved into very high-end dollar arrangements where it was almost taken out of the prop master's hands, and the studios themselves had product placement companies where there used to be external product placement companies the prop masters used to go to, but then it eventually got into the studios getting getting rid of the middleman and doing it themselves, which actually was a terrible thing and a real downfall. And the bottom line was it was always great because I used to tell product placement that I'm the guy you should be throwing all the extra
Yeah.
kickbacks to because I'm the last person on the set that will turn the Coke bottle to the right or to the left. I will put your product, I'll move it over 3 inches where you can actually see it better. But it didn't matter. Anyway, what I would do mostly though on movies, I didn't really deal with. I was never really a decorator. I was in set dressing. I was a set dresser working under a decorator. So what I would do is I would deal with what the decorator got, and we would normally get things. Many things are purchased, but they used to have in the old days, and it's not like that quite so much. Is they used to have prop houses in Los Angeles. And there were many prop houses. There were prop houses for weapons, Stembridge for guns.
Yeah.
There was History for Hire. This History for Hire is still there to
They
get.
still have a lot of prop houses down there, from my
Well, not
understanding.
like they used to. A lot of businesses went out of business.
Oh, I see.
Like Stembridge Guns went out of business because they were just eaten up by another company called ISS, which just got bigger and bigger and bigger. Printing companies, once we went to digital, everything changed. In the old days, we used to get magazines and newspapers printed on old printing presses. It was a trip. And that all changed as far as set dressing and props and furniture. That is still similar. There are a lot of houses in Hollywood and actually the Valley and Hollywood and Culver City that have props and set dressing and furniture. So you go and you load up a truck and you go bring it in. And I've had some decorators that were a little insecure, and they would literally rent 3 times the amount of furniture that could fit in a room or a house just so they knew they had enough stuff. And it used to drive us workers crazy because we had 3 times the amount of work.
I work for those as well,
And everything, and you can still, even for you in San Francisco, I know you know Terry Kundle with Propville, they can get you what you need, and generally it's 10% of the value per week.
Here's higher. It's 25%.
Well, there you go. They used to be 10. So anyway, it doesn't surprise me. But a lot of times you can get a production rental, which means, and there's also one production rental which will give you a discount on the longer use. And another one will be you rent it for a certain amount of time, and then you can apply some of that. If you, let's say you're doing a TV series and you don't know if it's going to go or not. Well, you rent all that stuff, and then eventually you got to have it, so you can work out a deal with them and use all the stuff that you rented, and they give you some kind of discount. But I never really went on that end of it. My end was hand props, weapons, hand props, printing, food, various whatever an actor uses or touches. I also used to do animals, but I didn't actually do the animals. But the animals were props, so I would have to acquire the animal trainer to work. I did movies like Sleepwalkers, a Stephen King film where we had hundreds of cats, and you never want to work with cats.
Oh, gosh.
Children and animals, but the worst are cats. So anyway, we had one cat on the movie that was a psycho cat that was actually it was sick mentally, and it would be used to do the...
Oh, my gosh.
It was great. But anyway, I used to also do all the jobs like prop man. My job was to carry and set up all the director's chairs. I don't know how that got to be a prop man's job. That used to be a union prop man's job, set up the chairs for the directors. So
it's just so fascinating. I think propping up here, it can be challenging, especially for furniture type of lifestyle shoots. We end up usually have to rent from furniture store at 25% value for sometimes even 2 days, not even entire week. Yeah. And we only have one prop house here in the Bay Area, so
that's the problem. Is also I'm a weapons specialist. I don't want to say a specialist. I was one of the only people in Northern California that actually did weapons, and I still get calls for people. And I used to have a federal firearms license, and I used to do a lot of things. But since 9/11, I let my firearms permit lapse, and I was still the only person with a Hollywood. It was called a motion picture. I forget what it's called, but I could rent weapons. And there really used to be there was one guy in the Bay Area that did weapons, but he died. Another guy was doing it, and he actually got busted for something, drugs or something, I don't know. But long story short is it's very different outside of Hollywood. Hollywood, it's really easy. You roll up a truck, you fill it up with furniture, you go bring it to the set, and your set dressers put it up, and it's pretty standard. And if you got to deal with businesses like getting a furniture, like if you have got a director or somebody that goes, oh, I want this couch from this store. Well, if they're not geared towards working with this kind of project, it's very difficult. It's very
Yeah, a lot of furniture stores actually don't want to rent anymore because, yeah,
that's a good reason.
yeah, it's
Movie
a
and
lot on them as well,
you destroy
operation
stuff.
wise.
We'll trash it, you know. So,
Yeah. And yeah, and then like royalty art is a big issue up here too because royalty free art. Because in LA you have prop houses for that, but up here you pretty much have to make your own.
you want to hear a little real short story?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Um, this is secondhand, so I'm not. Don't quote me on it, but I think it's pretty true. There was a movie called Two Men and a Baby. Remember that?
Right.
Well, in the first one, the actor walked into a scene in on camera. He walked into a scene, the character, and he looks at a painting and he smirks at the painting. I guess the artist was part of the characters, like his girlfriend or something. I don't know, but anyway, the artist saw that smirk and sued the studio, and that's one thing that really started dealing with what you're talking about. Another one was a painting in a famous movie. I forgot what it was, but the painting was hung upside down in the movie, and the artist saw it and sued the production company for that.
Oh my
And,
God, that's
and
crazy.
when we worked on big features, we would always get what the hell was it called? It was called the DeForest Report. And DeForest was a legal company that would read scripts and then they'd go over every possibility of potential legal ramifications. And they would send you out a finalized report that would say, you might have a problem with this. You may have this person's name you can't use. You can't use the license plate. If you notice, all the phone numbers in motion pictures start with 555.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
It's
Yeah.
because you can't use numbers. So yes, that's exactly what you're dealing with. And art clearance is something that I don't really deal with anymore, but I had dealt with it many, many times, and I've gotten many memos 3 weeks after we filmed the scene. Who gave you permission to use this? And I'm like, well, it was done 3 weeks ago. What do you want to do about it? So they've actually had to cut scenes in movies, not that I did, but that people did because they couldn't get clearance on it after the fact. So
That's crazy. Yeah, no, I've heard of Salas getting fired because something they did on a shoot. I think I heard a story about a Pari Barn Salas got fired because, they sell this chalkboard thing, like a message board, and he wrote like, oh, remember to call Terry, for example, and then he wrote a phone number. And I guess somebody had that real phone number and called Pari Barn because people called it for some reason. And so the stylist got fired because of that, because they didn't have legal clearance for that phone number.
yeah, it's like the old song. What is it? 857 630.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, no, I know the issues with that, but I just don't want you to please, especially for people that are listening to this, don't be looking me up and I'm not doing these Pottery Barn photo shoots, and I primarily right now I do real estate and commercial real estate and things like that. So I'm not in any way trying to say because I did movies at any level that I am doing photo shoots or dealing with stylists at any certain level in San Francisco, which I'm not. So I'm sort of kind of glad I'm not. And I'd also like to, I would like to in the next couple of years move more into product photography and working more in what you're talking about. But right now I'm not doing that. So I don't want to seem like I'm this photographer that's coming off as doing this and I don't do this. So anyway.
Yeah, no worries. I think
No
you're
worries.
fine. And
Yeah.
so my last question, I usually ask a question that what's one tip that you would give to agents or homeowners who are thinking about shooting their homes themselves? And this question actually came up in our group as well. Because there are just some circumstances that don't allow for a professional photographer. Usually it's budget issue. I'm gonna guess. And so homeowner or stager who take their own, like I take my own photos just for portfolio and also inventory purpose. But I personally, I don't like on our website, we don't actually ever use any photos I shoot anymore. I usually pay a professional photographer for photos if we put it on our website for portfolio. But in scenarios where people are taking their own photos, what suggestion do you have for them?
All I can say is, and this is really just overall, I mean, for almost everything, the world's a different place now. The internet rules. And one thing that has always been true, you only get one chance to make a first impression, and that's very true. Um, I tell people that even if you have to borrow money, borrow it and make the appearance that you're as good as you can be. You cannot afford not to have professional photographs. You cannot, and I'm not, you know what, if it kills me because you look on my website, you can see my prices. They may be higher than the guy down the street, but they're not killing you. And if you look at it's insane that, and I'm strictly talking about real estate right now. If you are not using professional photographs, you are missing the boat because now it can all be tracked. It can all be tracked. How many hits are you getting? How long is somebody viewing your listing photograph? It is coming down to less than a second. And if you can get someone to stop on a photograph for 3 seconds, you might have a chance at having them look at the next picture. But if you're like me and you've gone through MLS photos, you're just going click, 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 click of crap. And you got to have something that's going to stop them or you're never going to get it. It's not like it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It's all web-based. It's all web-based. Now it's also all based on your phone, so it's got to be a mobile website, a mobile compatible website. And as far as your fellow stagers, whatever you do, I work with my stagers if I'm working with you all the time, I'm going to work you out a great deal because I want you to have good pictures. But you cannot, for a designer, for anybody, you cannot use anything less than the best photograph you can on the web. You just can't do it. Whatever you do, spend the money to get pictures. Put your value, your emphasis on what is the most important. It's something as simple as if you have a business card, you print it on you don't even have to look at a business card. I love when you feel a business card and it just feels like quality. You know what I'm talking about. All the people out there that are listening to this know what I'm talking about. But the homeowner, man, get pictures. Get the best pictures you can get. Get an agent that values professional photographs. It's just simple, and it's imperative now. You can't not do it. I don't know how to emphasize it enough.
I totally agree. And like for right now, when I take my own photograph, I really just use it for inventory purpose, like what stuff we put into a particular house. And I only really using like professional
Yeah,
photograph on our website
yeah.
because I do think too it's that it's your portfolio. You gotta look good. And it's the same thing with selling a house. I mean, a house in the Bay Area, it's like a starter home is around 800,000. So that's
Yes.
a lot of money on the line.
Mm-hmm.
I totally
Yeah.
agree. Can I ask a quick follow-up question about that?
I'm yours. I'm having a great time.
Awesome.
I
So
love talking.
I know we talk about hiring professional photographer, but not all professional photographer are made equally, right?
Yes, yes.
So how do you pick the right photographer for your house?
Well, I'll say one thing is, unfortunately, you can't go buy the pictures on a website. You might be able to. Now, I'll say personally, you could look at my website, and I tell people, you pick me because you like the way the pictures look. Don't pick me and then think that I can make the pictures look differently. My photos look like the way they look. Now, with that said, some listings might look better than others because it's just the listing. Some might be wow and some might be, but that's not because of my photography. That's because of the listing. That's like a beautiful actor or not a beautiful actor. You don't know how good they are until you actually go there and see it. So anyway, but you really, I think the most important thing It's really important to get someone that can take great pictures, but the problem is it's consistency, it's reliability, not only picture quality, it's reliability. Half the job is making, when you get a photographer that will show up on time and show up when they're supposed to. The other half is getting someone that is professional, getting someone that is safe, is not breaking your $100,000 vase. The other thing too is making sure they have insurance, making sure they have liability insurance, $1 million minimum. The other thing is turnaround, reliable turnaround. I do very quick turnaround. I may say between 24 and 48 hours, but I might be quicker. I don't want to pigeonhole myself, but I'm really good on turnaround. My agents like me because it's one less thing they have to think about. And unfortunately, you don't know that until most of my work is all referral. I don't really get any cold calls to speak of. And it's because I've had agents that other agents trusted and said, use Rich Baum. And they're like, well, I don't know why I got to use Rich Baum because he's more expensive than the other guy. But they said, trust him. Trust him. He shows up. He does good work. He does good work all the time. Every time you get my work, it'll look great. You can't know that until you use somebody. And you might use a guy that one day the work is great because also the particular lighting and the whole look of the house might be really easy to light. And then you might get them in another time and you're going to go, oh my God, is this the same photographer? So again, don't rely only on the website because, man, we all know people's websites can look awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And I can put up photographs that look awesome, but, some of my work might look crap, but it doesn't. So I would say, just try and find somebody that you work with, that shows up, is reliable, and then stick with them. That's my agents, man. They all just stick with me. It's one less thing for them to worry about. They find their stagers are the same stagers, their inspectors are the same inspectors, and then their photographers are the same photographers.
That's very cool. Thank you so much for today. I really appreciate everything you've said. It's amazing.
Well, I look forward to hearing the finished product. I'm sure it will cut down to
Hey guys, so that's it for today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. I really appreciate you guys coming back week after week and telling your friends about the show. If you haven't done so, please leave us a review or rating on iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. This is going to help people to find our show, to grow it, and get more awesome guests like Rich. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave it on the show notes. For today, you can find the show notes by going to our website, www.stageformore.com/podcast, and just select the episode that you want to listen to. That's it. Have a fantastic week and happy staging.